All right. I think we are live. Oh, I'm getting errors. Oh, I've seen this before. So I don't think that should be a problem. Um,
I don't see anything on my side.
yeah, I think it has to do with the restreaming out to other things. So there could be some issues on like Twitter or something right now. We have a team that's looking at it though, so we don't have to worry about that here. Um, yeah, so we're live. Thank you everybody for joining. I can see people are already popping in. Let us know where you're coming from. And while people are coming in, maybe you two can tell us where you're coming from. You're both coming from the same place, right?
Yeah, Harry and I are both calling in from Toronto, Canada. We're at our office downtown. So, yeah, we're excited to be here. Thank you so much for hosting it. We'll save some of the introductions for a bit later. Harry, anything else you want to add to that?
No, it's great. Great
What's
to be
what's
there.
your favorite food in Toronto? Is there like a known thing to eat there?
Like the answer that anyone not from Canada is expecting is probably like poutine, which
Poutine. Yeah, yeah. Well, that's the
like
Canadian
or
or
I
maple syrup or something.
I just wake up in the morning and chug some maple syrup, like really get after it. No, honestly, I think one of the cool things about Toronto is like the culture of the city is so diverse. The exposure you get to all types of international cuisine, um, it really makes it kind of like a unique spot for having some good types of food. So I don't know if I could necessarily define like one staple item like off the top of my head. There's some other cities here. Like if I was going to say like Harry could probably give a better example of Montreal, but like they have
Bagel.
some yeah, some like they're pretty famous for some of their sandwiches and things like that. So I don't know if Toronto itself is necessarily like got one staple item, but we definitely are fortunate to have exposure to quite a few.
Nice. It's on my list. We just had some friends go there last summer, and now it's high on our vacation list
You
for the
got
future.
like well, coming from the States, you get 40% on your dollar. So it's pretty
Oh
affordable
yeah, good time.
spot right now. Actually, pretty
All
much anywhere
right.
in the world.
So I guess now that we've talked about where you're from, we'll do this in weird reverse order. Let's talk about who you are. So Brandon, you were just talking. You are the architect of growth, as you label yourself on LinkedIn. And then at Tempo, we haven't even talked about coming from Tempo. That's what we're going to talk about here. And then Harry, you're also on the growth team at Tempo. So thank you all both for joining. And I'm Charlie Chapman. If if you've made it this far into our webinars and haven't heard me blabbing too much, I'm a developer advocate here at RevenueCat and the self-proclaimed captain of the Shipaton. Um, so before we get into Tempo and everything going on there, I have a couple things around the world of Shipaton I want to talk about. But first, make sure you're asking questions. If you're in the live storm, there's a questions tab. You can throw things in. Please throw them out as soon as you see anything that's worth talking about. I will happily interrupt whatever we're talking about to bring those in because that's why we do these live. Otherwise, these would just be pre-recorded videos. And if you're not in the live storm webinar, if you're watching on Twitter or YouTube or LinkedIn, you can join our Discord, and there is a live streams channel, and you can ask questions in there. And I'll be sitting there monitoring that as well and bring those questions in. So please, please, please ask questions. That's why we do this. So yes, appreciate it. And you all have been so chatty throughout all of these, and I really appreciate that. It makes these a lot more fun. So going on in the world of Shipaton. So build-in public energy is still very, very strong. We're definitely entering the era of the quality of stuff we're seeing is getting better and better as people are further along in their development. It's honestly been kind of insane. A crazy one that I want to highlight over the last couple of days is Taiwo in London has been taking the build in public hashtag extremely literally, and he started setting up tables. This one is from a couple days ago, I think, in Leicester Square in London. I think this morning I saw he was sitting on the bridge outside of I almost called it Manchester, the main Westminster. You can see it in the background, and he's got his table, and he's showing off his game that he's been building, and you can see like people will just come up and talk to him because How many people have a table showing off their apps at a literal public square? So that is very cool to see. Also, Gautier, he may have been mentioned on one of the webinars when I was out of town. I don't remember or not now, but he's making this crazy like city builder game that looks extremely fun and interesting. Someone who kind of likes the old SimCity style games, and so very interested to see what's going on there. Um, and then I'm going to pronounce it wrong. Nikhil, he's been making YouTube videos about his journey as he's been building. But as a developer advocate at RevenueCat, he just recently made one about integrating RevenueCat into his Kotlin multi-platform app. And honestly, it's like the type of video that I should have already made. It's very well done. And it's the type of thing where it's like, if you're building a Kotlin multi-platform app and you need to integrate RevenueCat, you should just check this out because he goes through. You can see in this screenshot, he's got I forgot what tool he's using, but a visualization tool that actually shows how he's structuring everything. I should make this full screen too.
That's every
so,
marketing team's goal right there.
Yeah, it feels like cheating.
You essentially got UGC figured out when you can leverage the content created by your users and highlight what the app is supposed to do. That is always the goal. Hopefully some of these folks on today's call can do that for Tempo after this.
Hey, there you go. There you go. And then I threw a tweet in there from my boss, Rick, where he took a screenshot of our Slack where we were talking about, we have a Slack channel called Shipaton Good Feels, where we just throw the things in that we see around the internet that make us feel good. And it's very, very chatty because there's so much stuff. And at one point I was just like, this is like, it's crazy how much good stuff is coming out of this. And you can already tell that some of these are just going to pop and like there's going to be businesses built off of it. And I joked, we need to start labeling apps. You know how people will put YC, 2007 or whatever, like the year that they were coming from Y Combinator. I feel like in 10 years, we might be able to see like Shipaton from, 2026 or something for an app that's now like a big company. That would be very cool. But yeah, we've been extremely impressed with what everybody's been doing. And so keep it up. And honestly, excited to see this continue on even after the event's over, because these aren't just hackathon projects. These are real apps that you're really shipping, and then they're businesses afterwards. So excited to see that continue.
As a sponsor, I feel
go
like
ahead.
I should know the answer to this, but how many people do you guys have involved with it so far? With this?
Well, that's kind of a tricky question to answer because we reached the mainstream point where spammers started becoming a thing. So I think we're getting dangerously close. I should check this, but I think we're getting dangerously close to like 50,000 registrations. But maybe like half of those are people who are really going to submit. But still, last year's was 1,500 people, which felt like this huge, massive movement. And this year, I mean, you can just tell it is pretty insane. I think the Discord is thousands of people just in there alone. So yeah, it's definitely a movement, which is very exciting. And what we were hoping would happen seems to be happening, which is this is bigger than just a RevenueCat side project. It's really like a massive global thing that it's giving people sort of that little motivation to ship a thing that they've always wanted to work on, or maybe they've been working on for years, but just never had the motivation to actually put it out in the public. And speaking of that, the Shipaton IRL events happening all over the world. They're going on still. There's been a lot of them. There was one in Delhi a couple days ago. There's a couple coming up, which I'll talk about in a second. But last night, very exciting for me, there was one in my hometown in St. Louis. This was actually the first like proper meetup that we've done with this group that I've been trying to get built with some people locally. And it was extremely fun. We had people basically showcase their indie apps that they've been building. Dan, one of the people who started this group with me, he is the prototypical example of who I was hoping would join this competition, which is great iOS developer. He's had a collection of indie apps that he's built over the years, but he's literally never shipped one of them to the App Store because they were never good enough. And so when we started this, I was like, you just got to pick one and ship it. And so he took an app that he's been building, I think he said since 2022. And he's just been using it for his own side project. It's like a medication tracking app. And he's polishing it up. He presented it here. It looks honestly amazing. And he showed it off, and I'm going to make sure he truly will ship this app because it looks awesome. But this is exactly what this whole thing is for. And so it's very exciting to have an event locally. Also, you can see famous St. Louis style food there. We have St. Louis style pizza, which most people from St. Louis don't actually like. And then toasted ravioli, which most people do like, which is just fried ravioli. But if you call it fried, it doesn't sound as healthy as toasted does. So very fun night. And then there's a whole bunch of IRL events happening very soon too. So there's one in Barcelona on Thursday. There's one in Bengaluru, which I'll actually be in Bengaluru a few weeks later for Swift Barats. So if you're there, hit me up because I would love to see you. And you should go to Swift Barats. That conference is going to be awesome. And then also there's an event in Manila on Saturday. And keep up with Shipaton.com and go to the IRL events page to keep seeing all the events that keep happening and find one in your area because there are a ton of them. All right, so let's get to Tempo. I'm going to pass it over to you, Brandon. I think you have the screen share, and show us what Tempo does and how we can all take advantage of it.
Cool. Yeah, let me see if I can do this properly.
All right. And I should say I should have made a slide for this, but there is, you have it right there. If you go to tempo.com/Shipaton, you guys have a special deal for Shipaton participants that they can take part in.
Yeah. I don't know why it's collapsing into this format, so I'm just going to keep it like this. Hopefully that works.
Yeah, that works. See it? Yes.
All right, cool. So thanks so much. Appreciate the introductions. Appreciate everyone joining us today. Hopefully we can give you a little bit better introduction to Tempo if you aren't familiar with us. As alluded to earlier, I'm Brandon. I'm sure the architect of growth as per my LinkedIn, but I think that's more of a play on words given the industry we're in. In actuality, my title is head of growth here at Tempo and partner where I oversee the business side of the company. So everything from sales, operations, marketing, but most importantly, connecting with our audiences and our users to help continue to grow the company. Joining me today is Harry from our growth team. He'll be pitching in terms of questions, keeping track of those things as we go through this, probably calling me out on certain things that I missed to bring up. But Harry, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add. I don't know if you can talk while I'm talking. I'm not sure with this platform.
We'll see if it works. Hi, nice to meet everyone. Excited for Brandon's pitch and then Q&A at the end. It's probably when I'll do a little bit more of my talking, but excited for the presentation and to meet each and every one of you guys.
And as a quick reminder, ask questions, please do. I will awkwardly interrupt at any point to bring those in because, again, that's the point of doing these live.
Yeah, similar to I awkwardly interrupted you a few times. That's what we're here for.
that's what it's all about. Yeah. Otherwise, it's just a video. What's the point?
Yeah, no. For sure. I love that idea. I like to keep things a little bit more casual. To be perfectly honest, we were polishing this deck up and kind of putting together some ideas up till I think all of 5 minutes before we kick this off. So we very much play the game fast and loose, and I think that's the spirit of the company too. Is we're always evolving, always trying to make sure everything's up to date, and that's ideally what we're bringing to the table here. So before we kick off, I just wanted to reference that. We do have a private landing page for the Shipaton for people that are registered through that. We're offering everyone that goes and sign up, or if they're already an existing Tempo user, they can still get access to it, but 150 credits. It's essentially equivalent to 1 month free of our starting paid tier. So good opportunity if you want to test things out in Tempo, go a little bit beyond the free tier and learn a little bit more about what's possible within our platform. And I say what's possible because, frankly speaking, even if you tried that a few months ago or maybe it was as early as January of this year. There's a lot that's changed, a lot that evolved. And yeah, that's going to be a bit about what I'm talking about today, is essentially talking about the scope of how tempo is relevant in the scope of application development, software development, obviously with a focus in terms of mobile application development. But the key theme here is that we're actually rising beyond the scope of vibe coding. It's not to say that vibe coding isn't a piece of tempo, but what we want users to understand is that there's a utility beyond that. There's a feasibility to take a project, perhaps that's already built, so an existing infrastructure, or to take a product or UI perspective and actually draw things out similar to how you would in Figma, but have it be a code first solution. So with that, the theme of today's presentation is the rise of design engineering. And effectively, obviously, I'm going to talk about it under the principle of tempo powering that. So what exactly is tempo? Feels like a design tool, works like an IDE, powered by AI. So, we launched our self-serve product in late December of essentially last year. So coming up on 9 months ago. And at the time, that was the crux of, this vibe coding industry. We start to see a lot, buzz around it. Obviously, we've seen the success of companies like Bolt, Lovable, in addition to, the opposite end of the spectrum where developers have really started to merge themselves in tools like VS Code, Cursor. It's a really exciting time. But one of the things that really is important to understand is that tempo, like I said earlier, wasn't built to just be this vibe coding tool. It's not just a prompt to output solution. The real power of tempo is the fact that it's built in a way that it can handle complex code structures. We're effectively enabling complex applications to operate and function within tempo, but also so that people can use it in an environment that feels familiar to them. So the way that we like to simplify it down is essentially tempo is like Figma and Cursor had a baby, where the UI feels a lot like the traditional tools that a designer or product team would be used to, but the output is still React code based. And essentially what that creates is a really unique environment that can help, whether you're starting something from scratch or building something for like the Shipaton here, or you're an existing user, like for example, Charlie was brought up his friend that built the iOS app. You can import that existing code base into Tempo and build on top of that. So pretty that's a high level definition. Hopefully, as we kind of go through some of these next pieces here, you'll get a better understanding. But if there's any questions or things that pop up as discussed, don't hesitate. Before I kind of go a little deeper, I really like this. I really like this tweet. It's coming up on close to a year old now, which is a bit crazy. Charlie, you were talking about earlier how last year you only had 1,500 people as part of the Shipaton, and this year, you're close to 50,000. I think in principle, if you look back over a year ago, just where AI was, what impact it had on software development, we were in different worlds, and frankly speaking, next year we'll probably be in a completely different spectrum. And so that's just an interesting insight. But the point being of this topic here is that the scope of AI's kind of implications in software development has been plentiful, especially from a code generation standpoint. But we haven't seen the same impact on product. We have seen a level of prototyping, iteration, but not necessarily integration from an enterprise level. And so when we start to think about the scope of a traditional product team, we're still seeing, obviously this interest and groups still doing traditional workflows, going from Figma, copy, developers implement circle loops of kind of iteration. And so there's still a huge gap. And that's the gap that really Tempo is trying to address, and where we position ourselves that perhaps differentiates us from other people in the industry or other companies in the industry. It's not to say that they're worse or we're better. It's just to say that we're targeting a different branch. And that's going to be really fundamental to actually some of the pieces, especially as over the next month, there's some pretty exciting announcements that are going to be coming out to play about Tempo's direction. So instead of just listening to me blabble and going through boring slides, I thought, why not highlight this through a video? This is it's relatively speaking like fresh in the sense that it's only a couple months old, but there's still a few things that are different within the application. But I'm going to play this, let you guys see and hear for yourselves in terms of what Tempo actually is. And if Charlie or Harry, if the audio isn't coming through properly, please just stop me and we'll figure it out.
Kick back when you fake like that. Head out of the game, I don't play that fact. Once you let me go, no, you never come back. I'ma be the best that you never had.
There is one more thing.
Feel like every
Steve Jobs' one more thing drop is pretty good.
It's fun. So we have a really talented and creative individual who's part of our team that does all of our content creation stuff like this, and a lot of the tracks and things too he'll mix, and we have a really big video coming out in a month that stay tuned. That one is going to be, it's absolute fire. But yeah, definitely playing off of a few of those things. We're not quite at like the level, like it's definitely a different production than perhaps like the viral Cluely videos that are going out these days. not necessarily as what's the word I'm looking for? Provocative, but hopefully still interesting. So anyways, hopefully that was a good little tease to the application. Obviously more of a marketing video, but it does kind of highlight what I was talking about earlier in the sense of building applications using the chat features, but also having the stylistic ability to operate similar to what you would in Figma. There's some really cool features that we've recently built in, similar, like you can drag and drop components. You can highlight selected things and create custom components and asset layers. And one of the things I'm going to talk about later that I think is probably the most impactful or primary differentiator Tempo has is the fact that you can build on top of your existing design system. So, for example, we're working with some enterprise groups like Salesforce, Guidewire in the insurance industry, where they have their own custom design systems that are used to develop applications, and you can do that all within Tempo. So cool example. But before I get too off topic, what does this slide mean? 10 times development velocity. So I think, listen, this isn't a new topic. This is something that especially folks that are probably on this call or anyone involved in our industry has recently kind of come across, is the idea of what does AI do in terms of development velocity? What can it bring to the table? How can one person do the job of 10? And for us, so yes, Tempo, like it says in the top line, it's not just mobile apps, we're also web apps. But the solution that I say we're needing to address here is not, the first thing is about speed. The next thing though is probably the bigger one, is when we talk about developing applications, there's a bit of a false kind of, how do I put this? A false prelude within the industry where folks have made, maybe people that don't come from an industry and that's involved with this or have, zero technical background, and they think that you can just use an AI solution and go from 0 to 100 and have everything be production ready to ship, whether even ship
the one shot.
Yeah, exactly.
Thing. Yeah.
Exactly. Like the idea of like one prompt to solve it all. And I think that's, it's highly misleading. The reality of the fact is AI tools get you to 0 to 85, you get pretty far, but there's still a level of human that needs to be part of that picture to really get something to production grade. And I think, listen, even if we talk about like developing things and pushing things to the App Store, it requires a level of effort. It's not something that happens in 10 minutes. It, generally speaking, takes a little bit of time and effort to get that across the line. And frankly, that's something that we're very honest about. It's like the idea is to get things, to a production quality, but then recognize the fact that you still are probably going to need a little bit more effort to make sure you have your auth set up properly, your database set up properly, your security settings. And for us, that's at the root of what we're trying to do. Build something that offers an experience that is seamless, reliable, and built to last. So not only do we want people to have that experience using Tempo, but also we want them to be able to build products that offer that to their customers. And
a question that just came in, by the way,
sure,
is kind of related, I guess, because you mentioned you can build mobile apps or web apps, but they're asking if you could build games, like 2D games or even 3D games with this, or is this primarily a like productivity app kind of?
Yeah, it's more
tool?
productivity related. So like from a framework standpoint, what we're pushing out with Tempo is, generally speaking, React Native code. So, and then in terms of deployments, it's through Expo, Vite, and Next.js as kind of like the primary scope. So not too much on the actual mobile application, or sorry, mobile games space. In theory, you certainly could with that, but I would say that our product is a little bit more geared towards productivity and actual.
Yeah.
I can fill in here very, very briefly. To answer your question, and my apologies if I mispronounced the name, Mantis. There was a lot of hesitation there, but in short, yes. Obviously, both myself and Brandon are more focused on the growth side of the business, but we both play around with the Tempo software. It sounds a bit nerdy, but just for fun. And I have played around myself, and you are definitely able to build either 2D or 3D games through the software.
I would imagine like a puzzle type game or something that
like
behaves in a similar way
not,
to productivity app.
Exactly. It's not like the software itself isn't built for like the tools that we've built in here are not necessarily to like provide like that fun. Well, I shouldn't say fun. As Harry said, we do have quite a bit of fun making stuff in the application, but it's definitely not geared towards gaming.
Yeah, I would say, based on what I've seen playing around with it a little bit myself, I think it would be easier to build a game using this than it would be any of the other vibe coding tools I've ever seen, because you do have that actual visual control. You're not sitting there prompting to try and convince it to make some artwork that looks a certain way or whatever. So yeah, it would be interesting. I'd be very interested to see somebody try to build like
listen, please go for it. And I'll tell you what,
Yeah.
if you try to build a really cool game, hit me up. I will give you more free prompts. I'm interested
there you go.
where you could take this. We will support this vision.
Thanks for the question, Mantis.
Yeah, thank you very much. Hopefully we all provided a level of clarity in terms of what's feasible with all of our mixed answers there. Anyways, so as I go through, so the next piece is like, okay, obviously this is mobile oriented. So how do we kind of support that? So Tempo is partnered with Expo. Obviously, Expo is a big piece of mobile application development. Frankly speaking, they're just a great team. When we looked at the best way that we could, we started off as a web-based development company, like it was purely just React, and we're like, how do we support mobile? And that's where we started talking with the Expo team. How can we integrate Expo within Tempo? How can we make it so that it still operates in the way that we'd like to? And honestly, they're just a really great team that we feel is aligned to us in their vision of deploying like actual structured applications that can then be pushed to the App Store. In addition to the fact that, frankly, we feel like they're probably one of the most reliable groups out there. and obviously they support web-based development. So all of that together to say that how it works in terms of our mobile development is simple. So your screen may look a little bit different than mine, depending on what you're doing. And what I say there is because I have some design systems that are already looped into here from some companies that we're already working with, but nonetheless, you'll still see this framework element, Vite, Next.js, and Expo. You just select Expo, and then that will enable you to be able to kind of go down the path of creating a React Native application. The other thing that you can do is you can actually import your existing repo into Tempo. So say you're not building from scratch, say you've already started something and you're like, which is actually something that happens quite often. We have groups come to us and say, we want to put this into Tempo. We want to get our teams using the infrastructure that you have set up to try and build faster. And so, yes, it can involve a little bit of support from our side, just depending on the dependencies and how things are set up. But it usually is something that can be put together within 24 hours to get pretty complex applications up and running in Tempo. Anyways, so talking about complex applications. So I wanted to highlight a few groups that are actually using Tempo, groups that we're actively working with ourselves. So one of the things that's really unique to Tempo is we're not just a SaaS company. We're not just a product. We actually help companies in terms of articulating their vision through our services model. So it's professional services. It's almost like the Palantir model of seeing, custom software development and how it plays into the role. So what we do is we use Tempo as a source of truth, but we still embed a designer and a developer into the project, and we work hand in hand with our clients to help them develop their applications. So the first example that I'll highlight here is Dakota Prep. They are live in the App Store. They have thousands of users across North America between the US and Canada. Essentially what it is an application where individuals that are going through, I think it's starting off with just electrical school right now, but so they're trying to become electricians, and it's like a study training tool. So it's like helps them in terms of going through their testing, understanding, what's relevant to the industry at the time, and likewise what they need to pass their tests. I'm not going to pretend I'm an expert or an electrician here, so I don't want to go too deep. All of these elements in terms of I could pull up their specific canvases to show some of these elements, but for the sake of time, I'm going to reserve that to just highlight one at the end there in terms of what we did for this actual presentation. Another cool one is Entra Mobility. Harry, I think they're also a YC company. Literally backed by company at the top. So fellow YC company. We recently started working with them, and this is the reason why I want to highlight this is they actually started outside of Tempo. So this was not built in Tempo, but we integrated their application into Tempo, and you can see how it's up and running. The right side is just a screenshot from inside where you actually click the page. This is a web end native application. So you can see the screenshots in a mobile format. And so what you're getting, the input that I wanted to show here is, although it's a visual output, you can see all that code behind the hood, which is not necessarily too new, but the value of being able to essentially change any of these elements from a design perspective is what really kind of differentiates itself. MindSpirit, another one here. This is highlighting a couple of different things. So what we did with this one is they actually had Figma designs that were actually starting to go, that they were ready to go from the start. And so we're not big on the scope of reinventing the wheel. So we recently actually just pushed out a bunch of changes to our Figma plugin to really improve the performance of it. So essentially you can copy paste directly into Figma using there's a really nice UI now. Before it was pretty shitty. We called that out ourselves in our latest update. I think it's called Volume 3 that we pushed. If you want to check that out on YouTube. But essentially what this is we imported the designs from Figma. Those designs then kind of prop in. You can see the little Figma import button on the top left. And then it starts to talk about the code changes that are being put in here to build out those actual components. I also wanted to show something in here. So there's one potential error where we say fix with AI or hire a human. And this is an important distinction where it's like, listen, AI is not perfect. And I talked about this earlier, but there's this over glorification of what the power of AI can do. And, you know, don't get me wrong, it's incredible what we've been able to achieve, but there certainly comes a place in terms of like this AI slop. And that's something that we're pretty vocal about, in the sense of saying, like, certain places there's going to require a human to come in. Whether that's us, we have the option to hire a human, in terms of like someone can come into your project on an hourly rate and come and help you guys out. Or you can run through the cycle of fix with the AI, which generally speaking, you can resolve problems. But depending on the complexity, having those options and that flexibility is super powerful, especially for individuals. We talk about like indie development. So folks that, you know, maybe have a background that can get pretty far, but that last mile is presenting a lot of challenges. So instead of spending 20 hours trying to do something, you can get the support that you need within an hour and have that fixed up and ready to go. So pretty cool option.
And this kind of feels relevant to a question we got in earlier too. And maybe you'll talk more about this as we go. But Abdullah Rahman asks, how do you ensure the code that Tempo generates today can scale and remain maintainable as the project grows beyond just an MVP to a production-ready, team-driven application?
Yeah, I think this is actually more of a topic than a direct question. And for
That's
us,
true, yeah.
For us, the way that we think about production grade applications is where, like, we're pretty vocal about the fact that we don't think that pure software is sufficient in terms of like scalable code applications. Like, as you're like, sure, building an MVP, getting something to market, but as you start to scale that code base, there still you need that human in a loop perspective. Whether it's from the design side in terms of optimizing UI creativity, understanding how humans feel and think, and making sure that you're articulating what your customers want to see rather than just standard components and templates. In addition to, from a software perspective, like data architecture, how is your app functioning? How is it scaling? How do you have your security parameters set up? So, like, to answer that question is twofold. So Tempo, the way that we work is, yes, there's an IDE code functionality here, but ultimately speaking, you're pushing this code into your existing repo. So you're pushing that code to get like many of these other applications. And frankly speaking, there needs to be an expert involved as you scale to production quality. And that's essentially that gut check on AI. It's funny, we even use AI to gut check our output before we pass it through to another human in terms of our team. So even having like testing implemented with like Claude, so that you can have additional checks and code structure to say, hey, is everything that I want to be done built within this? What are potential challenges that are within my code base? So like that question is like I said, it's a bit of a Pandora's box. It's a topic more than necessarily a direct answer. But the easiest way for me to answer how we handle it is the fact that like code bases in Tempo can be imported in, they can be worked on locally. Can be pushed to your local repo. So you have that flexibility to essentially, like, if you operate in an environment outside of Tempo and bring it back in, it'll still function. So that level of flexibility enables you to scale and use additional tools beyond perhaps what's just involved with Tempo. And that level of that is how we support that growth.
It feels like the sort of ethos behind this tool is very different than most of these other sort of vibe coding tools, in the sense that it's really built more around a speed booster afterburner for a ship that's already running. And but you still need to make sure the ship's pointed in the right direction. It's not like
yes,
tell the AI to go and you just keep asking it to go. What's that?
I said, thank you, Captain, being the captain of the ship.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. I can't help but bring the ship metaphor.
No, you're 100% right. I think you know that's a really actually great point to bring up right now. Is Tempo, the way that we've built the application is it's not a lightweight application. Like it's built on top of storybooks, yes, but like the container structure is it can handle these complex applications. So it's very important for that from an existing application and more robust code structure. But frankly speaking, that also enables that individual user, that individual creator to have a level of sophistication. So you can go beyond the scope. You can still build from scratch and have that confidence that that output is going to be flexible depending on, what you're looking to achieve. Like, I'll be honest, if you're just building a landing page, Tempo, yes, you can do it, but frankly speaking, there's probably another tool that would work a little bit better in terms of like that initial output. But if you're looking to build something like a full application, have that production, that's where Tempo really thrives.
Is there a specific recommendation you have for if you're starting from scratch and you want to make sure that the output you get is architected in a way that you can pick it up and run with it even outside of Tempo, and its architecture is structured in a way that you can continue to work off of it? Is there specific things that you should do, or is Tempo kind of from like internally, is it built so that it will always use like common patterns and common code structures so that it feels familiar to a React developer?
Yeah, I think, listen, the way that Tempo is built, obviously, like similar to other tools, we're using reusable components. Tailwind, ShadCN is like the source of truth. That level of sorry, I just got a Slack message that popped up. I thought I had my notifications turned off. That level of like standardization is really important. And that's honestly how AI is able to, kind of continue to push past barriers in this industry, is by standardizing outputs. The idea of integrating context into the application is certainly feasible as well. Obviously, we put some level of guidance, and we've done our own level of engineering in the back end to make sure that the output is standardized to a certain, no, I don't want to say standardized, but perhaps like maintained to a certain level of quality and output. But the honest answer I will have in terms of like safety nets and like past to that is, frankly speaking, like you should have someone involved in the project that understands a code base. Like it shouldn't be a Pandora's box to you. It shouldn't be something that you have absolutely zero knowledge of, because that's just a risk. And like, listen, if you're pushing something out for you and your family or friends to use, sure, who cares? But if you're actually like trying to get something approved on the App Store, or if you're looking to build a business, that's where you have to take things a little bit more seriously and understand the fact that you can't just rely on the output of something like this. So that's kind of what I would say is like there's safety nets built in, but frankly speaking, you as a user also have to understand what you're looking to achieve and then match the resources accordingly.
Cool. Yeah, that makes sense.
All right. We are nearing the end here, but I wanted to bring up the scope of, proofs in the pudding, so to say, and kind of show this. So yesterday I got one of our designers to kind of mock up a linear, so to say, like mobile version within Tempo. So to be directly honest, essentially this is about 4 hours of work in terms of what the team put together. And I'm just going to pull this up so that we can do a little bit of a live demo in Tempo so that people have a bit of a better understanding of how things work and what that environment looks like. And hopefully that provides a little bit more clarity as well. It's going to take.
And this is a design that was mocked up in Figma?
No, this was all done in Tempo.
In Tempo directly. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you're sharing. We're seeing the slides.
I'm not
still.
yet, but
okay.
It's okay. Now it's coming.
There we go.
So it's just loading the boards here. There may be a few things in here that aren't perfect, as discussed. That is simply because, like I said, as you start to build things out that are more complex, you start to understand Oh, this is just the theme issue. But honestly, so what I want to do here is just give you guys an idea of what was done. So pretty simple inspiration. This is that scope of starting from zero. So linear inspired Kanban interface. Essentially, this is rebuilding the Kanban structure. This is an Expo application, so everything in here can be run within that environment. I can also, what you can do is you can also preview in a tab, preview on your phone. So you can actually open this up in the Expo application. All of these elements are essentially unique storyboards. So these are all unique pieces to the application. And so if you go and you click each one of these elements, you can actually see in terms of understanding like the code bases of each one of these unique elements. This is just a preview error, actually. If you actually go into the application, which I can show you, if I open this in a new tab, you can see that it actually looks correct. And then if we look at it from like a mobile version, you can see that everything there is also looking a little bit better. Let me go back to this screen. So yes, code. Now we talk about design. So there's some really important pieces to this. Is essentially like the way that we built these applications and kind of to support these elements is to integrate both on the side of having like standardized elements. So here you can see these, essentially this is Tailwind, like as a backbone in terms of it. Now, all of these elements though, like you can essentially look at them and make any sort of changes that you want, either using the AI or you can start to use the actual design tool panel. So that level of flexibility, I think, is probably one of the unique elements to Tempo that is, you know, a bit cool. Other things here is you can actually interact with that page in terms of seeing how it works. So you can see this actually is fully functioning. Normally I'm doing this with a mouse, so I'm trying to figure out how to use a keypad again correctly.
So you can interact with it in the design board.
Yeah.
Wow.
So you can actually like see how it functions within the design board. You can understand like
cool.
all of the unique pieces to that page, and then you just click design again, and then you start to go through things here. I don't know. Let's change the style on here in terms of like make the color a nice background yellow.
And that right there, you can see it looks like that's using the design system that you've already
that's correct
imported.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is what I wanted to show here, but essentially you can also track where all the changes are made. So everything in here is your full history. This is everything that I was doing AI edit file in terms of fixing some stuff up, but this is essentially like the style change. So then if you want to, you can also just command C it and essentially revert back. And then if I reload the page, there was an error, but if you reload the page, there we go. It goes back and it essentially reverts the code back as well. So pretty unique aspects to it. The elements in terms of like, there's some other cool functionality in here. So like we have like the MCP App Store built into here. This is done with a partner of ours, but essentially you have access to, I should have connected a Supabase backend before doing this so that you could see it, but there's about, I think, 42 unique players that you can integrate with, Firebase, Stripe, other elements like that. 11 labs, just some cool pieces in terms of getting those working. Figma extension. Oh, I didn't mean to click that, but well, actually, I guess we can take a look at it. This essentially is just a Figma plugin that enables you to copy and paste things directly. Cool little addition, especially if you're wanting to bring things over. I realize we're kind of getting near the end of time. I'm back on the application now, I hope. Some of the other things that are really unique here is the local editing. So collaboration is what Tempo is intended for. Like this product is intended for product and development to work together. So in essence, you can essentially we talk a lot about how this tool is built for design, but we also wanted to make it so that developers could work in a local environment and that have that code essentially reflected. So you can use any of these local editors and they update in tandem. So think of like almost like a hot reload state where if you make a change in Windsurf, that will automatically be reflected in the code on Tempo. So you have an environment that is able to support both sides of the perspective. And that's pretty powerful, especially as we start talking about more enterprise and larger scopes. Other pieces here, it's just like, these are just essentially the different pieces of the application. Storybook components, this is where you can create your own reusable components so that you can kind of start to build even your own design system. Community, it's not necessarily necessary. Git settings is where you just pull things in. Yeah, those are very high level pieces. There's a lot more to the application, but hopefully this gives you an idea of what's feasible within Tempo. I don't think there's anything else I want to talk about on that. So maybe I'll just go back to this tab because we're running out of time. And to articulate the final thought, I would say here is, I mentioned the proofs in the pudding in terms of an application of whether you build in it. So the proof for us is the fact that we run Tempo on Tempo. So we've integrated our own Tempo design system into the application. We build on top of that. So any changes, think of, for example, UI changes, like, I don't know, how does a user share the project? In terms of like the modal that pops up, those changes aren't made by our developers that go in and do it. It's made by our product team. The product team will make that change and they'll ship a PR that gets reviewed by the developers before it gets merged. So essentially we've rethought the process. And so when we think about the future of digital innovation and the future of software development, it's empowering teams with AI. It's not necessarily replacing them. It's not replacing you and I. Perhaps it's restructuring how a team is built, but there's still going to be that need for the human, at least based on our interpretation of what the future will hold. The agentic experience of the future is more about empowerment than replacement. And that's ultimately what Tempo is built for. It's built to empower teams. It's built to empower individuals. And it's built to essentially enable you to take advantage of AI in a way that is meaningful, whether that's for mobile or web-based development. That can happen within the Tempo platform. So anyways, I'm going to end there. I've spent far too much time talking. Hopefully it was useful. As discussed, if you are a Shipaton member, please feel free to go into our website. At that domain there, you'll be able to get 100 free prompts. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me directly or Harry. You can find us on LinkedIn. I probably should have included emails or something on here, but that's okay. Yeah, that's it from my side. Do we have any questions or things that we'd like to go through? Harry, any specific pieces that you wanted to add?
Yeah, there are a few more questions. I definitely want to get in. I think we have time, but I just want to say first, like, this is super helpful because I've played with a lot of these tools, and especially the more like kind of generic type of prompt in a box, get out an app things. Those you can demo pretty easily, like yourself, because they're pretty straightforward. That's kind of the point.
Yeah.
But with this one, it was a lot harder to just try it because the point is you're building something complex with it. And so seeing those examples was actually extremely helpful. So.
It's funny. It's very much a double-edged sword. And
yeah.
When we launched, we were in like I said, the midst of that vibe coding perspective. And so we got looped into that. And if I'm being even more honest, the product itself was not at a level where it was scalable at that time. You know, it was almost like, I don't want to say prematurely brought to market, but it was brought to market in the sense where we learned a lot. We learned a lot about what users were doing. We learned a lot about what we needed to do. And we're pretty excited about where the product is at now. And like I said, within the next month, there's going to be some pretty big announcements in that direction. And I'm fairly confident that people will be very excited to give us another go and try out the application if they did already. And yeah, I'll leave it at that for now.
Cool. Well, I'll get to these questions just before we run out of time here. So
sure.
Love Lee, which if that's a real name, that's an amazing real name. Asks, can Tempo write the documentation resource for apps created within Tempo? It'd be cool to get the PRD, Mermaid flowchart, and documentation.
I think that's one of this must have been a softball coming at me here. That's one of the coolest things about Tempo is the way that we start is expand. Like if you're starting from scratch, like you can put in a prompt and it will write a PRD from that. It will then turn that into a Mermaid flowchart where you'll actually understand a user flow. And in terms of like supplementary documentation beyond that, I would kind of ask like, what exactly are you looking for there? But those two pieces are the critical components. And then you can actually prompt the AI to make changes. So you can say, hey, I actually don't want that direction. I don't like this flow. I want to improve this. Or I want, within the PRD, you want it to, say you're building Airbnb, but you want it to look like the same interface as, I don't know, Dyson, a lot more clean. You can essentially bring that into it. And then that PRD will evolve so that it's structured in a way to meet that. So yes, to answer your question, you can write that level of documentation, have that level of support.
Is the prompt pretty open-ended? Like, could you ask it to write one-pager doc explaining how this system works or something like that? Or is the prompting generally like to make code changes?
No, you can ask questions in it. Like you can talk to it like Jarvis. It can become your best friend.
That's that's another deep dive topic.
Yeah, exactly. Charlie, you and I are gonna have to go for a beer or something.
yes. Next time I'm in Toronto. Vlad also asks, which I have thoughts on this too, is it better to originally use Swift for building the app or other applications like Tempo, etc.? Obviously, you all are going to be a little biased on this one, but I'm going to guess your answer is don't use Tempo, just use Swift directly, right?
Yeah, exactly, right? Why would you bother using Tempo?
I'll say my answer, and I'm coming at this as a primarily Swift developer that also does other languages. I think if you're wanting to take advantage of the sort of massive growth in AI tools, you should use React Native. That's pretty much just like a full stop easy answer, because that's where the juice is. I think in large part, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the corpus of training data when it comes to React and React Native is just so much larger that the models are just way better at working with it.
Yeah, I think if you think about like the future of development and where things are heading, it's clearly more rooted in React and React Native. Like you're seeing a lot more interest in the scalability of it. So I think there's always going to be like legacy, and how does legacy impact the future? And we see that a lot, especially even in terms of enterprise, of like understanding like the evolution. We have people that have started to migrate, and they come to us and say, hey, can you help us with that process? Can you take what's existing? So if you have an existing Swift app and you're like, hey, I want to kind of evolve that, we can chat about that too. But yeah, I'm not going to come at this directly and say, no, just use Tempo, because I think a lot of people have like their own experience and that's going to guide the direction they go. But I will say that if you have the ability and if you are interested in trying something new, and I would recommend Tempo.
I would just say filling in there very briefly. As Brandon was sort of getting at, we do work with a couple, I say like enterprise legacy teams that are currently porting over from Swift. And obviously everyone has their opinions. There's pros and cons to both, but we do have certain of those clients our team is able to support. We have a couple different models, because it's a little bit more of a manual lift. There could be more time sensitive notions where we do have this sort of agent plus model where we more or less combine our own humans. So people that are experts in Tempo, more or less pairing the software with humans in the loop to make sure we're building, I'd say, more complex end-to-end features, whether you don't have those humans or you don't want to be allocating your resources in that sense. That's where that model sort of comes in. But it's a very I'd say common question. Me and Brandon are of course, biased. But obviously always recommend to do your own research. And if you are looking to port over, very welcome to support there.
Yeah, I think the main advantages to going with Swift or Kotlin, like writing native basically, is if your goal is to make that sort of super high crafted indie darling app that uses all of the like native features that iOS offers, you might have an easier time doing that natively with Swift. The other piece, which this is an interesting trade-off that this boom in AI tools has created, is I used to always say it's always easier to, if you don't care about making it cross-platform, especially if you're an indie developer and you're just getting started, it's easier to go with Swift and iOS because the build process is so much easier. Like Xcode is this big hulking mass, but it's a single app that you download from the Mac App Store even, and then you can write your code and then you can upload it to App Store Connect and ship it from that app. It's this kind of simple contained thing. If you want to do stuff that's complicated, it can start getting very complicated and even annoying compared to other tool sets. But for a small case, it's easier than like the React Native build pipeline is kind of confusing. I think the thing that's changed is, one is the tools like Tempo making it so much easier to just get started and kind of get that infrastructure built up from scratch. And then two, the other thing is Expo seems to be making it way easier to kind of go from zero to shipped in the store compared to what it used to be. But I think those are kind of the trade-offs that you're kind of looking at least from my perspective. I love
Expo has changed the game. Like
for sure.
It's fully changed the game. And so like without that, it'd be very difficult for us to have a tool that is both web and mobile compatible. Like it would be extremely difficult. So I completely agree with you there.
Cool. Well, let's see. I can share really quickly here the sort of ending. So thank you all for coming. Thursday, we have our next webinar because these are just still on trucking. And it's going to be about ASO tactics and building your kind of initial audience, which is really exciting, especially as more and more of you are getting kind of your first version shipped out there and looking for ways to grow your app. So that one will be really exciting. Definitely join us for that. And with that, thank you all for joining. And Brandon and Harry, thank you so much for coming on and sharing with us about Tempo.
Thanks, Charlie. Appreciate the time.
All right. See you all the next time. Bye.